Okay, welcome to this lecture on compound interest. In the previous lecture, we looked at simple interest, and now we are going to extend this to compound interest. Now, simple interest is when all the interest is calculated on the initial capital only. So we keep on calculating the interest on the original amount. For compound interest, it is the method of calculating interest periodically and then adding the interest to the initial capital. So basically, you calculate interest on the previous interest. And I'm going to illustrate this with a simple example. So let's just first start with simple interest. So if I have a time period of, let's say, 4 years, T0, T1, 2, 3, and T4, and I invest an amount of 1,000 rands, and my interest is 0.1 per annum, and it is simple interest. Okay, so in the first year, I will earn interest on my 1,000 rands. So the interest in the first year will be the 1,000 rands times 0.1, which is equal to 100 rands. And then at the end of, or in the second year, I will again earn interest 2, and that will be 1,000 rands, the original 1,000 rands, times 0.1, which is 100 rands. Then in the third year, my interest in the third year will again be my original amount, 1,000 rands, times 0.1 to give me 100 rands. And then lastly, in the fourth year, my interest will again be my 1,000 rands times 0.1 to give me 100 rands. So my future value after the 4 years, my future value will be my present value plus all the interest that I've earned. So that will be my 1,000 rands plus all the interest. So it's 4 times the 100 rands, and that will give me 1,400. Okay, now if we go to compound interest, the same example, except that now we're going to work with compound interest. So we have T0, T1, T2, 3, and T4. We start out with our 1,000 rands, and now our interest is 0.1 per annum, but it's not simple interest, it is compounded annually. So the interest in the first year, let me write with blue again. So the interest in the first year is the 1,000 rands times 0.1, and that will give me 100 rands. Now the future value at, let's make that red, the future value at time point 1 is equal to the original amount, which is 1,000 rands, plus the interest that I've earned, and that is 1,100 rands. Now in the second year, I will again earn some interest. So the interest in, I'm going to write it here, the interest in the second year is this 1,100 rands times the interest rate of 0.1, and that's 110 rands. So now the future value at time point 2 is the previous future value, 1,100 rands, plus the interest that I've earned during time period 2, and that was 110 rands. So that will give me 1,210 rands. Okay, then the interest for time period 3. So interest for time period 3 is now this 1,210 rands, and we earn interest on this 1,210 rands. So that's that future value times 0.1, and that will give me 121. So the future value at time point T3 is 1,210 plus the interest 121. So the future value there is equal to 1,331. And then of course in the last year we will again earn some interest, and that interest will now be 10% of this 1,331. So that's 0.1 times, and that is 133 rands and 10 cents. So my future value, or my final value after 4 years, future value 4, will then be this 1,331 plus the interest in the 4th time period. And that's 1,464 rands, and that's .10 cents. So now we can compare the future value with simple interest, the future value for compound interest, and you can see that you've earned more money making use of compound interest than with simple interest. You will see in the notes that there are some notes on how to derive the formula for the compound interest. We can actually derive that formula very easily by repeating the example that we've just done, but we do it in general terms. So we can quickly do that. Okay, so we start out with the present value, and then we earn interest in the first year. So interest 1 will be the interest rate times the present value. And then we get the future value at time point 1. That future value is equal to the present value plus the interest earned during time point 1. Now the interest earned during time point 1 is just the interest rate times present value. And we can simplify this to present value 1 plus interest rate. Okay, then in the next time period we will earn interest. We will call that interest 2. And that interest 2 is just the interest rate times the capital at the start of that time period, which is, we can just call that the future value 1. Okay, so the future value at time point 2 is the future value at time point 1 plus the interest rate times the future value at time point 1. So I'm substituting it with that. I simplify that to the future value 1 plus the interest rate. Future value at time point 1, 1 plus the interest rate. Now the future value at time point 1 is given here. So I'm going to substitute future value time point 1. I'm going to substitute it with this. I'm going to substitute it with present value 1 plus I. And then I still multiply. So I've substituted this future value here with the yellow. And then still with the 1 plus I. And then we can write it as present value 1 plus I squared. So now we can do it for the third time period. So for the third time period, my interest during time point 3 is just the interest rate times the future value at the start of this time period, and the future value, the start of that time period was future value 2. And now we can find the future value at time point 3. And that is just the future value at time point 2 plus the interest. And the interest 3 is the interest rate times future value 2. I simplify it. And now again, I can substitute this future value 2 with what I've got here. So I'm going to substitute it with that expression there. So future value 2 is substituted with present value 1 plus I squared. And then I still multiply it with the 1 plus I, this one here. So then I have present value 1 plus I cubed. Okay, we don't have space to do it for time period T4, and we can continue in this fashion indefinitely. So we can now write it in general. I think you will be able to see the pattern here. So we can say that in general, the future value at time point n is equal to the present value 1 plus the interest rate to the power n. And this is then the general formula for compound interest. It's very important. This formula is very important. We're going to use it over and over again. And just note the difference between this formula and the formula for simple interest. For simple interest, we had present value 1 plus n times I. So we multiplied it there with n. But now for compound interest, we do not multiply the I by n, we take it to the power n.